So you have a itinerary and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big on the trails and some super glamping. One ideas, tip, news and reviews, a podcast the first rate and here just for you. You don't have to think about it, join us and be about it. Something interesting we want to hear about it, come on let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints Podcast.
Sponsored by Midland, communication for every adventure, the industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MyMedic. Sponsored by Tembo Tusk. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DeMoss Collective, mission built and made for mobility. Sponsored by BrewTrek. Sponsored by Hard Impact Designs.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Hey everybody, we've got a special podcast this week. We have a very special guest. We have Dan Grec. Now, for those who don't know who Dan Grec is, Dan is an adventurer, he's a photographer and videographer, and growing up in Australia, family camping trips gave Dan a passion for wilderness exploration and remote destinations. After studying and working as an engineer, Dan left it all behind in search of a more vibrant life, setting out to turn his dreams of grand adventure into reality. Over a decade and a half, Dan has driven his vehicle to the wild and remote corners of 56 countries across 5 continents, documenting what he sees and learns as he sinks into local cultures. With no end in sight, Dan is now outfitting a vehicle for 4 seasons travel to colder regions of the planet. You can follow his adventures at The Road Chose Me.
Well, welcome, Dan. We owe you some congratulations and a whole mess of other things going on out there, I understand.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's there's a lot on the go, and I'm trying hard to organize the next expedition and finish the vehicle and yeah, trying to do 20 things at the same time, but you know all about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
So I guess a good starting point, Dan, for those who don't know you, is to cover some of the quick bullet points. Could you tell us where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I grew up in Australia, kind of in a small farming town. And then I moved down to Melbourne for university and I enjoyed that. And then came over to Canada actually because I wanted to go snowboarding and I wasn't ready yet to kind of start a career. And then over the course of a few years, I worked as an engineer, but I also went snowboarding and kind of adventures in the mountains. And then somewhere along the way, I realized I wanted to have more adventures and less time sitting at a desk. And I remember the day when I said to a friend of mine, we were out on an amazing hiking trip. And I said, I want to make this my life. What we're doing right now, I don't want my life to be sitting at a desk for 40 hours a week.
Yeah, well, we all share that in common.
Yeah.
So do you have a history? Did you grow up overlanding or traveling, off-roading or anything like that?
In Australia, like road trips are fairly common. Kind of the summer holiday for the family is to take a road trip probably to the beach. But Dad didn't have a 4-wheel drive. We didn't get into any of the wild parts of Australia or any of the deserts or anything like that. We really just stuck to paved roads and went to kind of touristy places. So it wasn't until I came over to North America that I started being excited about what happens if I go further into the mountains? You know, what happens if I get further away from other people?
Cool. I want to ask, this is an opportunity for me to get a personal question in. I'm in the midst of writing a book. I have been writing this one book for 2 years now. And I thought it was going to be the easiest, quickest thing I ever did. And I'm finding it to be very challenging. You have written several books that I have read, and you're very good at it. My question is, well, it's kind of a two-parter. What inspired you to go from like other social media people and add writing? What made you decide to write? What was the inspiration for you to be a writer?
I actually started out by writing, Phil. When I hit the road on the Pan American Highway, that was in 2009. And so there was no Instagram, there was no YouTube, there was no TikTok. And back then, I really wanted to have a blog and I wanted to just share my adventures to anyone that wanted to read it. And I wanted to work on my photography. It had always been something I wished that I had time for, but I'd never made the time before. So I just sort of set myself a challenge and said, I'm going to document my whole Pan American journey on my website. And so, kind of once a week or twice a week, I would just sit down and write a story. Sometimes it was literally like what happened to me that day. And sometimes it was more like encompassing a whole 2 weeks of, things that went wrong or things that went right. And I just tried really hard always to sort of write from a different perspective or from a different angle or like include a different narrative just to practice and see if I could do it. And like, can I tell a good story in writing?
Well, you mentioned stories, so that brings me to the second part. You do something unique. You have books where you're basically being informational, and then you have some books that are more storytelling. Usually people pick one. Is there a challenge in one versus another? Are you more comfortable with one versus the other?
Yeah, I think because I'm an engineer at heart, I think I always prefer the informational, and that, when I'm seeking out how do I cross the border of the Congo, I just want the facts. And so it's easy for me to, once I have them, to write them down. Whereas the stories, it always is difficult. What stories do you tell and what stories do you leave out? And sometimes when people ask me about my Africa trip and they've read my book, I feel a bit disappointed almost. They don't know about all the stuff I didn't write about. Like, I'm like, oh, but you don't even know about this whole thing, this side trip that like, because it didn't translate well, or I didn't do a good job of writing it down at the time. So yeah, the storybooks are really hard. And you have to decide like how deep into the description do you go and how much kind of backstory or how much side story do you want to get into politics? Like you could write a whole bunch of chapters about politics, or do you just want to stick to the straight and narrow of like, here's what happened. Here's this crazy guy I met at this border crossing and blah, blah, blah.
And it's funny because it's so true that you mentioned that, like, sometimes some of the best stories you actually don't talk about. I find that in video too, even on YouTube or on other social medias, where you put out a story and then you go, wow, some of the, then you'll get in a conversation with somebody. We're having one today, and we were talking about, a past trip or whatever. And I'm like, I never really told anybody about that. Maybe the best story out there.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? And then you get people say things like, oh, I wish you went to such and such. You missed out by not going there. And I'm always like, oh, actually, I did. I just didn't have the camera out and I just enjoyed it for a week. But I've never talked about it because it was for me. It wasn't like for my audience.
Right.
Yeah, it's a funny thing like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
With your writing, I want to ask you about your process. Do you already have like a basic structure or foundation, no idea in your mind before you start? Or does the book kind of create itself?
I find if I don't have a basic idea in my mind, I can sit in front of the laptop for 5 hours and barely write 2 paragraphs because I just am constantly kind of rewriting them or thinking like, oh, I should change that angle, or, oh no, I didn't want to talk about. And I never get anywhere. So for me, it's a lot better to have more of an outline or more of an idea. And so often when I'm writing, say, a chapter, I'll write a sentence that'll be the opening paragraph, a sentence that'll be the closing paragraph, and then like a couple more sentences that'll be somewhere in some other paragraphs, just to sort of anchor me and to like, oh yeah, this is the paragraph where I'm going to talk about the guy that had no teeth, or this is the paragraph where, the winch line snapped, just to help me have structure. Otherwise it takes an eternity and I spend weeks in front of the keyboard without barely writing a thing.
I think you've taken those writing skills and applied them very well to your YouTube channel. I find them to be very informational, and I don't have to pay attention to pick up the information, if that makes sense. You give it in a real simple way that I feel like anybody who's watching should get it.
Yeah, like how would you say, Dan? Which way do you think you connect with the audience better, through writing or through video, or is it a different group of people?
I still don't feel very comfortable on video. I still feel like I haven't found my personality on YouTube. I'm a little bit too of like a robot when I talk to the camera. But I do enjoy the idea that YouTube has opened me up to a whole new audience of people who don't know that you can drive your own vehicle to kind of any country on earth. And you don't need special permission. You don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know, you could just jump in whatever you already own today and drive to Panama, and it's easy.
Right.
All the border crossings, it's, a formality, a few pieces of paper, a few stamps. It doesn't take kind of National Geographic level money or organization, years of planning and border helpers and fixers and support vehicles. And you don't need any of that stuff.
Right.
And I don't think many people know that. Most people assume it takes, it's an expedition of like 20 vehicles and 50 people and this huge undertaking. I'm like, no, actually, you can just go for it. Go have adventure.
That's a good angle to take too, because I think you're right. People, unfortunately, there's too many people that are always getting ready to get ready, or they're couch sitters, and they think it's a lot more complicated than it actually is. And I tell people, like, look, every dollar you spend, right, on getting ready or building something is a dollar you don't have to spend on the actual travel itself, right?
Absolutely right. And I think basically everyone, once they've been on the road for a few months, they're like, I want to do anything I can to make this last longer. So like, I got to spend less money. I got to make my savings account stretch.
Yeah.
And if you're in Nicaragua sitting on the beach, you're like, great, I'm only spending like $4 a day. Like, I can stay here for a long time. This is fantastic.
That's about where I am right now, actually. I'm not spending any money here. So it's, I can stay indefinitely.
That's perfect.
So you glossed over it a little bit. I want to get a little more into detail about it. You said you left Australia, you moved to Canada, and that was pretty much the genesis of your exploration and your travel. Was there a specific thing that happened and a particular experience that really was the epiphany for you?
There was actually, Phil. Yeah, I was working at a desk job. I used to be an engineer. And I enjoyed my job. My coworkers were incredible. And there was a couple of people there in the office. They were in their 60s, let's say, early 60s. And there was just a few instances where I looked at them and it occurred to me, like, that is my future. That is my life. All I have to do is sit at this desk for the next 35 years and I will be them. Like that's it. And, my bank account goes up every 2 weeks. Nothing really is very difficult. I was renting a room in an apartment, a shower every day. I could go to the bar after work with friends. And it actually terrified me that was all that was ever going to happen in my life until retirement. And by then I'd be pretty old and probably a bit decrepit. And it scared me into action to be like, oh my God, I need to quit and I need to get as far away from this as I possibly can and go and actually live and have some mad experiences. And you know what? If I didn't enjoy it, or if it went, I did, let's say, a year or two of that, I could always come back to the desk job. It's fine. It's not a failure to go and try some adventures and experiences and then be like, yeah, I did that. It was great. And now I'm back, working or whatever you come back to. I think I realized then I would rather try and learn and have the experience than sit around wondering and forever say, oh, I wish I did that. Or, I had that opportunity, but I didn't do it because of blah, blah, blah.
Well, at what point did the experiment not become an experiment anymore and you realize, yeah, I'm going to be doing this for a while?
That's a good question. I think I was a bit apprehensive as I drove into Mexico. I didn't speak Spanish, and you hear all the horror stories about how dangerous it is and everything. And then I think as the weeks rolled on and I got further into Mexico and then maybe even into Guatemala, and, you start seeing these Incan ruins and monkeys swinging through the trees. And then I poked lava with a stick in Guatemala. And then I just started being like, hang on a minute. People are really friendly. I feel really safe. My savings account, I can stretch it. I'm doing okay money-wise. I thought the trip was going to take a year. And then somewhere around there, I was like, oh, no, I'm going to slow down. Like and I stretched it out to 2 years where I was like, okay, yeah, this is incredible and enjoyable. And I want more of this.
Mm.
Well, I want to talk about your vehicle. I know you're in the process of doing something new. We won't talk about that right now. But to this point, you've been a Jeep guy. Why a Jeep? Why has that been your choice? Why has that been the platform?
It's a funny thing, Phil. I actually kind of fell into it on accident. When I first came over here, like I'd never had a four-wheel drive. I'd never driven in the snow. So I didn't know what I was doing. And when I asked around, people were like, buy a Jeep. You know, they're pretty inexpensive. They work great in the snow. The heaters are strong. You know, they're cheap to fix. And so I did. And kind of I've just followed that mentality ever since. The second one that I bought, I always wanted a Wrangler, you know, so I could take the roof and the doors off, kind of had that beach buggy, you know, dream. And so then I owned it outright because it only cost $5,000. And then when I thought about driving to Argentina, I already own it. It's a four-wheel drive. It's so far been really reliable. So I just took it because why spend more money when you don't need to spend money? And over the course of that journey, it never broke down once. I drove it 40,000 miles and I sold it for $5,000. So actually it was completely free. Mm-hmm. And then so then when it came time to think of my next vehicle for Africa, I was like, why wouldn't I get another Jeep? Like, you know, when you use that value proposition, and that one kind of worked out the same way. I really didn't spend much money. And actually it's sitting right outside now. I drive it every day here in the snow after driving it 55,000 miles around Africa. And it still has never broken down. It has cost me almost nothing in maintenance. And so when I look at it from like $1 per mile of enjoyment, I think it's incredibly hard to beat or to like do better than that.
And I've got to imagine at this point now that a Jeep has sort of become part of your story.
You know, I think it has a little bit, but at the same time, I'm totally open to the idea of switching. I don't, you know, Jeep don't sponsor me, or I'm not like a diehard. But basically, I want to buy something that's inexpensive that will get the job done and take me, you know, to really amazing places around the world. And I do have a bit of a sense of I want to buy vehicles that normal people can buy. So I think we see a lot of expeditions, people go in like a Defender 110 or they go in like a Land Cruiser 70 series. And I think the majority of people in North America, they look at that and they say, oh, well, too bad I could never do that. Because they kind of can't ever buy that vehicle. It's like unobtainium. Versus I think when I drove around Africa in a Jeep, I think a lot of people looked at that and they said, wait a minute, I could do that. And that's what I would like people to take away from my journeys is like, yes, you can do it, because I'm just a perfectly normal person who bought a perfectly normal Jeep and went and had like an unbelievable adventure for 3 years. Like you could do it too if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And I'm asking this for my audience. They want me to ask every adventurer this question. What tire brand and size and what style tire do you use?
So I've been running Yokohama Geolanders for a long time now, and I use all-terrain tires, which I think is the right blend for overlanding, where you're always going to be on pavement, you're often on gravel, and sort of rarely in like really bad mud or, you know, really soft sand or something. So I think all-terrains are the right choice. And for me, I'm always interested in getting better gas mileage because gas is the biggest expense on the trip. So the less of it that I can buy, the better. So I don't want to run huge tires. So for me, I actually just use 33-inch tires on my vehicles, keep everything more stock so I don't have to upgrade axles. I don't have to re-gear diffs. I don't wear out things like U-joints and drive shafts. In fact, I don't even know if I could break the drive shafts or U-joints on my Jeep if I tried, because they're only 33-inch tires. You know, when you're in the middle of the Congo and you're getting wheel spin and you're in a big mud hole, I would much, much rather the vehicle get stuck because the tires aren't huge than the opposite problem of, okay, yeah, I've got 37-inch tires and now I've just gone and broken an axle shaft in the middle of the Congo. Like, that is not what you want. So it's better to get stuck in the mud and use the winch than to use 37-inch tires and use heaps of gas and probably end up breaking something.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I've never been a fan of super modification to vehicles. I mean, the engineers spend a lot of time designing something for a reason. And, I've learned in my Jeep lesson, we're talking about Jeeps here. I've had a couple myself that I had modified. And sure enough, the second that you modify one thing, it affects 8 components down the line. And it's great and fun if you're going to be, quote, wheeling or using it, in the States somewhere where you can have access to things. But it's a whole different world when we're traveling throughout different countries and overlanding through, a lot of areas. It becomes a different challenge altogether.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I couldn't agree with you more. As a toy to take out on the weekends, absolutely, like modify to your heart's content and have fun. Like a Jeep on 40-inch tires, that's awesome. But yeah, if you're serious about even driving up to Alaska for a summer, like highly modified is not what you want.
No.
Yeah.
People listening probably think, he was an engineer. He had a job. He was rich. This was easy for him, blah, 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 blah. Go over some of the hurdles of getting to where you are right now.
For sure, Phil, for me, and it's good you mentioned it, the biggest one is money. So I don't have a lot of money. My salary when I decided to drive the Pan American Highway, I was earning 48,000 Canadian dollars a year, which is, I don't know, high 30s US. So not much money. And I didn't have any savings. So I wasn't rich by any stretch. I basically had to start making sacrifices to save enough money. So, I walked to work every single day, even in the winter. I didn't eat out. I didn't go out for beer with my friends. I didn't buy anything new. So I don't buy like new clothes or like a new TV or anything like that. Basically, all of that money just goes into a savings account. So I'm kind of making all of these sacrifices in day-to-day life so that I can afford to then take time off work and go and have these adventures. And basically, while I'm on the road, I just spend down my savings account. And I found it really interesting too. Almost all the overlanders I've ever bumped into around the world, they have the same story. They're school teachers, they're mechanics, they're bakers, they're completely ordinary people who just said, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 3, 4, 5 years saving money as hard as I possibly can. And then I'm going to quit and I'm just going to live on my savings account until the money runs out. And if you go to a cheap enough part of the world, you could go for 2 or 3 years just living on that savings account. That really is, I think, how the majority of people wind up driving around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a number of them actually, funny enough, parked right outside my truck here in Mexico right now. And many of them are Europeans, and they've driven across Canada and come down this way, and they've taken off. The other thing, obviously, you could probably address too. I mean, there are ways to make money on the road. And certainly, you're involved with a little bit of social media and YouTube, and talk to me about that. What's your thoughts about that?
That's been a really complicated one for me. On my first trip, like I said, it was before social media, and I did not make a cent on the road, and it was really freeing and really liberating to be like, now I am not working. Now I am just enjoying. And then when I got back, I had no money. So I just immediately went back to a job. And so it was this kind of really clear like distinction between working or not working. But now my life is a bit different. I try to earn money from YouTube. I write these books as I travel. I write magazine articles that I sell about my trips. And so when I'm on the road, I often have to work quite a lot. And so my recent Australia trip, I probably was on my laptop like 20 or 30 hours a week. Trying to earn the money to fund the trip. So to some degree, the trip is a job at that point, which takes away some of the enjoyment and makes it less freeing and less wild and more like, no, I have to do this because it's my job.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a balance involved with that, for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard balance to find how walk that fine line of like, now I want to enjoy myself or now I need to earn money.
Yeah. And so you can see that sometimes with content creators that become too focused on the job side of it, and they lose sight, and that the story becomes less interesting. I think that's the big challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everyone loses their passion a little bit when it does, because the whole reason we started doing what we do is because it's like, I don't want to have a job. I want freedom. But then when you have to realize you have a job, you're like, hang on a minute, this isn't what I wanted.
That is fun.
Yeah.
You've been to Africa on journeys and South America, Australia now. Favorite country that you've been to so far?
I'm sure you've been asked this. You've definitely been asked this.
I usually don't like these questions.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, I find it fascinating too. When I'm on the road, the places that I loved, I meet people that didn't like them, but then they loved places that I didn't like. So I think it comes down to who you meet and if the weather is good and the mosquitoes bad. And so it's complicated. But for me, I have a real soft spot for Gabon in West Africa. So Gabon is only a tiny little country, but it has tons and tons of remote wilderness. And so I saw like wild elephants on the side of the road and gorillas. And you just drive out into these villages and meet really friendly locals who, they're not tourist people. They're not there to sell you stuff or make money. They're just living out in the forest, in the jungle. And so Gabon, for me, it had the real perfect blend of like friendly people, wild places, and kind of freedom. You can just go wherever you want. And like I wild camped for the entire month I was there. I never paid for camping. It was incredible.
When you're planning these journeys, I'm assuming you minimum at least a year out minimum are planning these journeys. Do you consider politics in your planning? And if so, how does it weigh in on your travel?
Yeah, definitely. You're right that it is a year plus of, and when you say planning, probably most of that time really is just saving money. It's just the simple fact of I have to go to work, and I can only save X dollars per month. So therefore it's going to take me however long to save enough. But yeah, politics does play into it for sure. And thinking about safety, and especially, on a continent like Africa, things do change quickly. And so it is something you want to be aware of and think about. And the best source of information was always from other travelers on the ground. So anyone who's going in the opposite direction to you, you just immediately ask them, hey, you guys were just in the Congo. What did it feel like? Did you feel safe enough? Did you wild camp or did you feel safer, inside of a locked compound? So it is definitely a consideration. And right now, I would love to go to Central Asia. I would love to go check out all the stands and Mongolia and all of that. But it is all exceptionally close to Russia. And Russia aren't being very nice right now. So is it a good idea to go there? What's going to happen, if I'm in Belarus and Russia decide that they would also like to have a look at Belarus as well as Ukraine? So it is definitely, a consideration that I think a lot about.
Now that you have a travel partner, do you consider security in a different way? Do you approach it in a different way?
That's a good question, Phil. I don't think that I do. It's been really interesting, actually. Most people assume, that a man is safer on the road than a woman and that there would be like different challenges. But I think actually once you're a couple, I think you're actually safer because the locals can relate to you a bit better. They understand what a family unit is. They understand, a man and a woman are like, together, and that they have like parents and maybe kids and nephews and all of that stuff. Versus when you're just a single guy, you kind of may be a little bit of an oddity or a little bit like sketchy in that, like, why aren't you anchored? Why don't you have a family? So I think actually being a family on the road or being a couple on the road is somewhat safer and it's easier to connect with people that way.
I never thought about it that way, but that was very good. Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because I do see that.
Yeah, I met lots of people in Central and South America who had kids on the road, and they basically said anytime something looks a bit shady, all you need to do is whip out your kid, and everyone will just be like, "Oh, they're a family. Oh, we're not going to mess with a family." Like that's a sacred thing, because family is so important in every culture in the world. Of like, these people need to look after their children. They don't need us to try and mess with them.
Yeah.
You made me just realize something that I do subconsciously when I travel. Um, Being a middle-aged gentleman by himself traveling, I kind of subconsciously try to break down that invisible wall that I think is there when I'm meeting new people. But I never realized I was doing it till you just said that.
For sure. It's always worth trying to, just be on the same level as the people that you're talking to and just hang out and don't sort of, I don't know, think that you're better or in any way parade yourself around. You're just ordinary like everyone else. You just blend in, be the same.
So without getting yourself in trouble, give us the pros and cons of solo versus traveling with someone.
I mean, solo's incredible because you can just go wherever you want, whenever you want. You know, when you wake up in the morning, you don't have to have a discussion about like, I want to drive the world's most dangerous road on the side of a mountain. You just go and do it. It doesn't matter if it's a bad idea.
Right.
Versus, I think, you know, as soon as you have a partner, you have to compromise and you have to sort of have a discussion, and there's pros and cons about like, yeah, you want to go and drive out in the mountains, but I want to go into the city and like sample some local coffee or some like arts and crafts or something. So it just starts to be more complicated to, you know, find that common ground or that common interest. But of course, the huge benefit is you get to share it with someone. You know, you're just not alone. All those meals, all those sights, all those experiences. I often think about this actually, you know, thousands of days of my life, I could tell a story about, I don't know, when an elephant walked into camp, but I actually have no one to share that with because no one was there. So I can't ever sit down with a friend and be like, remember that time when that thing happened? Mm-hmm. There was no one there. So yeah, I somehow I feel like maybe my adventures are a little bit more real when there's someone to share it with, because I can then later reminisce or recall what happened.
And you probably make better decisions because there's two brains. You know, I mean, there's a dialogue going on, and sometimes I'll be the first to admit I come up with ideas. They're not always that good. And at least if somebody was there by me and said, you know, Mike, I don't know about that. You know, it's a two-way street then.
It's definitely true, Mike. But I sometimes am worried that we're going to miss out on all the good stuff if we never make bad decisions.
That's true.
Yeah, like
some of the best times are bad decisions.
Oh, totally. Like it's sort of funny where you're like, you want random stuff to happen, and maybe you even want things to go wrong a little bit. Like it's okay to get lost or it's okay to get stuck in the mud pit. Whereas like if you plan perfectly and only make smart choices, those things will never happen. And then you won't have those experiences.
Yeah, that's true.
No, it's a weird one though, isn't it? Like you want stuff to go wrong, but not very wrong.
Not that bad.
No, just a little bit. And then you're, oh, okay, I can handle this.
Yeah.
And then your Jeep rolls over and then you say, what happened? This is not good. Too much, yeah.
Well, Dan, we like to get philosophical around here.
Oh boy, here we go.
So my question, and I ask everybody this, what do you wish you had known when you started out? And you can take this any way you want: life, relationship, business, college, whatever.
I wish that someone had told me it really is okay to do whatever you want with your life. You really can just decide and go for it. And maybe that's like go to work and, you know, earn lots of money and then end up with like a sports car and a big beach house. And like, that's great. Enjoy it. Like, I kind of wish I had a sports car. Or maybe it's only go to work 2 days a week and spend the rest of your time volunteering at a soup kitchen. Or like, you know, there's like 1,000 different things that you could do in this world. And I don't think anyone ever told me that there was an option other than go to work for 40 hours a week. Like that's the fundamental building block that it all starts with. And then maybe you could squeeze in some things on the edges. You know, if you want to go mountain biking on Saturday, that's okay, but make sure you're back at work first thing Monday morning. So yeah, as the years have gone on and as I've met more people, I realize there are a ton of people who don't have that kind of as the foundational. They've found a different way to live life that is just different, not better or worse, just different.
And in the last 12 months, well, considering the travel that you've been doing, I'll extend it out to 24 months. In the last 24 months, what would you say is a standout piece of gear that you've obtained or used?
Standout piece of gear, probably the one
Or your
that
best investment in gear?
The one that probably made the most sense was like a GPS messaging device. So I got a Zoleo, but like a Garmin InReach or any of those type of. I've never felt the need to have one before. I didn't take one around Africa. I didn't take one on the Pan American. Because the funny thing is, in those countries, people never think about who are you going to call. Well, let's say you do break an axle shaft in the middle of the Congo. Great, you've got a sat phone. Who's on the other end of the sat phone that can help you? Like your embassy's not going to send a vehicle out to get you. There's no one in the you can't call your friends in the US and say like, "Hey guys, I'm stuck. Like, help me." They're like, "We're not going to be there for a month." So it never made sense before. But actually, in Australia, they do have search and rescue, and they will come to your rescue. And so when I drove the Canning Stock route, which is probably the world's most remote road, I took a satellite beacon and I did message my family every day, just a quick little update. Here's where I am. Everything's okay. And I have no doubt it would have saved my life if I needed it. I was the last vehicle through for the year, and I would have died out there if the vehicle broke down and I couldn't fix it. Yeah.
You were on top of your game with your videography when you were in Australia. Anyone listening who is not familiar, I can't imagine that, but if any of my listeners don't know who Dan is, go check out his last trip on YouTube. It's called A Road Chose Me. And I just think you were on top of your game with your videography with that.
Thanks, Phil. I really appreciate that. I worked really hard to try and document what it feels like to really push into the unknown. And my fears come out and my trepidation and all of that, because it's real. I just went for it, and here's what it looks like.
It made me want to go, because I haven't done that yet.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, Mike, because it was exceptional. When you're in Australia, make sure you do some of those adventures. They're incredible.
I want to open this question up to both of you guys. You mentioned you just went for it. I do these interviews. I've been doing them for years. And in my personal experience, the people that I talk to at some point say those exact words. I'm asking two big time explorers here. Is that something you hear amongst your brethren often? You just went for it?
Mike, you go first if you want.
Oh boy. I'll give you the quick answer. I think that generally a traveler or somebody that likes to go on adventures realizes that tomorrow isn't promised, and what's happened in the past is gone. So today you live for now, right? I'm not suggesting don't live or don't think about the future or at all going forward, but you don't know how much time you have. You just don't know. You're not guaranteed anything. So I do think it's that's been my motto, particularly in the last probably 4 years of being full-time on the road, is just do it.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think there's an element there too. When we say like we just went for it, that doesn't necessarily mean we like got in the car that day and started driving, but it means we made the decision that we will get in the car and go driving. So it might take months to move out of your rental unit or your house and sell off all the junk you're not taking with you, quit your job, save up enough money, organize all your gear. The Jeeps that I've driven, I've built, a water system and a 12-volt system and put solar on the roof. And that stuff all takes a lot of time and effort and energy. So it's not like we just suddenly one day said, I'm going to go for it, and then recklessly got in the car and started going. There still is quite a long process of thought and planning, but it's more like we made the decision to do it. And once you've made the decision, don't go back on it. Just commit everything and go for it.
Yeah. So the idea that I get when I hear that from you guys is basically I'm not going to procrastinate.
Yes, that's a good way to say it. Yeah. Of like the time is now, let's make this happen. And sometimes you have to literally move mountains, but do it because it's worth it. This is what you learn, I think. And the more you're on the road, the more you realize it's worth it. And, you know, when I got home from the Pan American Highway, I was more fired up than ever to like, I'm going to go and get a job. I'm going to save money as fast as I possibly can so that I can quit as soon as possible and get out of here and like go have more adventure. It was like my whole mission in life.
That's right. Yeah, it's not always the glitz and the glam that you see on a camera or read through a book. There's a lot of background planning, but I think Dan's right. It's like when you make that decision, that's the turning point. That's the cross, and obviously there's a balance there too. I always say, like, you don't want to keep getting ready to get ready. You have to do enough preparation, but don't overdo it. I find the more you plan and the more definitive you are about stuff, the more disappointed you become because more stuff goes wrong. So you have to be sort of flexible too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
I know you're going to be moving into more colder regions for your next adventure. With that said, my question is, what is your favorite type of trail, landscape, geography to travel in?
I think the deserts have always spoken to me. In Africa, I saw some incredible ones, the Atacama Desert in Chile and Bolivia. And then, of course, in Australia, I spent a lot of time in deserts. And the solitude, the lack of people, the stars, it just is, everything kind of slows down and is really simple and uncomplicated. Versus when you're in a jungle, there's all these noises and the insects and like there's water dripping on the leaves and it's like crowded. Whereas a desert is like
it's chaos.
Chaos, yeah. Whereas a desert is just like still and calm and simple.
You always have like a pretty decent kitchen setup in every vehicle that I've seen so far. Do you have any rituals like a first meal that you always start out with in a journey or anything like that?
I don't think I have anything like that. I do have a few favorites. Once I get on the road, breakfast every day is egg, lettuce, tomato wrap. And I'll usually put a bunch of mustard in there to make it interesting. And that somehow just evolved to be like my go-to of like, I don't even use my brain and I've kind of already cooked it before I've woken up for the day. And it's interesting you say my first vehicle did not have a good kitchen and you've never seen it because there basically aren't any photos of it. I literally had a hiking camp stove that I put on the ground and that's how I cooked every meal on the Pan American Highway. And it was terrible. I ate ramen noodles way too much. I ate poorly and I promised myself I would never do that again. And like that's not sustainable for me. It doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me happy. So I said never again.
Have you had any, I would say, dietary challenges traveling, finding healthy food, finding food that's palatable or that you like?
I'm pretty open to eating whatever's on offer. So I'm not usually very fussy. Definitely there were some meals of like kind of fried fish and things that I wouldn't say I enjoyed, on the side of the road in Africa. But I ate them because I was hungry. But more often than not, I found street food is delicious no matter where you are in the world. It's cheap, it's plentiful, and it's a whole bunch of flavors and ingredients that I would never use myself, but actually it's delicious. And it's an incredible way to just sort of meet locals and slow down to the local way of life. And so for me, eating street food every day for lunch is one of my main rituals that I like really enjoy.
So what made you decide to go to colder regions? You're the desert guy.
I guess I'm running out of deserts. When I look on the world map these days, like I've spent a lot of time south of the equator. And then when you go north of the equator, kind of all the land masses are like really far north. So yeah, it's just time I love going places I've never been before. So it's all about, let's pull the map out and start learning about places I know nothing about. That's where I want to go.
What should I have asked you, Dan, that I didn't know to ask? I follow you incessantly, but I still know I didn't ask you something I should have asked you probably.
I feel like people assume that I'm not afraid, or that I somehow, they say, oh, you're really brave. And my standard answer to that is, well, there's a fine line between brave and stupid. It just kind of depends on the outcome of like which side of the line you were on. Um, but no, I think it's always important to mention, like, I had a lot of trepidation, and I was hesitant to cross that border into Mexico. And then, like, the day I drove into Africa, like, I was shaking, and I, like, the first time I got out of the car, I like locked it immediately and closed the door, and only opened the door the least amount I could. I was really worried that someone, because I'd heard for so many years, like, Africa's dangerous. If you go to Africa, bad things are going to happen. It's kind of ingrained in who I am. And it took months and months and months to overcome that, of like every single day living on the ground and people just being extremely kind and friendly. And then I was like, oh, the reality is actually nothing like that. And then eventually I could like relax into it and really enjoy myself. But yeah, no, I think like I am afraid sometimes, and I am hesitant, and I do worry. And even sitting here now, it's hard to remember like driving across Nigeria, but like people were really kind and really nice. Even the big military guys with guns, they were really friendly, and they cracked jokes with me, and they were happy to have me there. And all of them said, welcome to Nigeria. Have a great time. Like, yeah, right on, man. So it's like, it's scary when you're sitting here, but once you're on the road and you start living it and you feel the way that people are treating you, it's not scary in real life.
I'm being off the cuff here now, but I would really like to expand on that with the two of you. I think this is the perfect trio for this moment. All three of us do or have done a lot of solo travel, and I think we probably all have it in common, where we get lots of questions about fear factor, security. How do you do that by yourself, and blah 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 blah. And like you mentioned, that you do have a fear factor. And most people are shocked that I'm like, yeah, I'm scared as hell. But that's a part of life to me, is overcoming your fears, taking on challenges, and coming out on the other side. That's one of the parts of travel. That travel isn't just seeing something pretty. It's overcoming your inhibitions and your fears. What do you say to that, Mike?
Well, I think you're right, Phil. I mean, one of the things, fear is often associated with just unknown, like or in an environment that you're not used to, right? I have the worst border crossing anxiety, I'll call it. Like, even today, I've crossed, I don't know, 100 different country borders probably, and I get anxious every time I do it. I don't know why. It's just ingrained in me. Even coming down here to Mexico, which I've done multiple times, I always like, okay, we're across the border now. I feel better. So I think fear is a real thing, and sometimes it's just you get yourself worked up over things that they're not necessarily reality. I know Dan was talking about Africa. Africa, definitely same thing. You're always told that bad things are going to happen, and border crossings are difficult, and blah 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 blah. I experienced some that were more challenging than others for sure, but like, never did I have anything, an issue. It just, when it comes down to it, it's people are people, no matter where they are, and no matter what position they're in. Even like you said, with carrying big machine guns, they're still humans, right? And I go with the gut feeling principle. That's my thing. I run by gut feeling. If it doesn't feel good, move on, or don't park there, or go somewhere else, or whatever. But just go with your gut.
So you have fear too, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay,
definitely.
that's
right now I'm getting ready to potentially head, at some point, whether it's immediately or in a little bit, going down the Pan American and going through Central America, of which I've been in almost all the countries. But it's still, it's weighing on me. I'm still thinking about it. I've got friends over there right now. We just talked to a couple of people a couple of podcasts ago, and they're just crossed the border from El Salvador, I guess, into Honduras. But, I'm following them to see, okay, what happens to them here. And Dan mentioned earlier, it's the best information is always the people coming the other direction, or people that on the ground, real people. That's a better source than any other source that could be out there.
Dan, how does someone find you on social media?
I am The Road Chose Me pretty much all across. So Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and my old website is theroadchoseme.com. That has all my stories from all of the Pan American and all of Africa. But then these days I've been YouTubing mostly. So the whole Africa and Australia expedition, they're all on YouTube on The Road Chose Me.
And is there anything else that you'd like to tell my audience?
What's Dan? Where are you? So where do you see Dan over the next couple years? So like what's all the people listening to us out there? What can they expect?
I'm going to get back on the road here pretty soon. So I need to finish building the new vehicle, and then the plan is hit the road for 12 months again and go to a bunch of countries I've never been to that I'm really excited about, and then document those travels and show people how they can do it themselves. I still feel most passionate about doing that, and so that's where I want to spend my time and energy.
Anything else you want to say, Mike?
No, I'm looking forward to more YouTube watching.
Mike, I'm looking forward to seeing you head down the Pan American. It's incredible, man. You're gonna love it. It's amazing, and like we said, it's challenging. And there are those days where you're exhausted, but there are also those days. Yeah, I mean, you'll poke lava with a stick. You'll have monkeys like climbing on your car. It's crazy. You're on a different planet than what you used to. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, you were one of my travel heroes. So this is a notch on my belt to have you on the show. Thank you for coming. And I just want to also thank you for taking me through the COVID with all the videos that you put out during the COVID. I'm sure a lot of other people probably want to thank you for that as well. I recommend anybody who has any ounce of blood of adventure in them, exploration, check Dan Grec out. Check him out all across the board. A Road Chose Me. Is there anything else you want to say?
Thanks very much for having me, Phil. And I got to thank you guys too. This always gets me stoked of like, oh man, like Mike's out there doing it. And like, I got to get back on the road. This is great. Like, yeah.
What's the temperature? What's the temperature up there?
It's in Fahrenheit. It's probably like 30 degrees today. It snowed really hard today. There's like 3 feet of snow on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm ready for tacos and margaritas though.
Yeah, having tacos and margaritas, and it's about 80 Fahrenheit here. So
life's tough.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. It's so good to see you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys again. I'm sure we'll catch up at some future event.
Sure of it. Yeah, we'll do it again.
Thank you so much, Dan. The last thing, you guys know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on a trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.